The otherworldly mages could never have imagined that the woman they discarded as useless was actually a logistics powerhouse with abilities bordering on divine. While ordinary adventurers struggle through monster-filled wilderness with empty stomachs and nowhere safe to sleep, she can casually summon a fully equipped luxury camper stocked with endless food, water, and electricity. They assumed a woman abandoned alone in the forest would quickly become monster food. Instead, she turns survival into a relaxing camping trip, and all it takes is one grilled fish to recruit a handsome adventurer as her personal bodyguard. Our story follows Takanashi Rin, a woman in her 20s who loves camping, cooking outdoors, and tabletop role-playing games. On what should have been another peaceful trip, Rin sets up camp beside a lake, lights her stove, and casts a fishing line. Her rod suddenly bends so hard that it nearly snaps. Convinced she has caught the biggest fish of her life, Rin pulls with everything she has. Unfortunately, no fish appears. Instead, a white-haired young man with red horns comes flying out of the water. Rin stares in disbelief at the soaking wet stranger she has somehow caught beside her campsite. Catching a handsome man instead of lunch is certainly unexpected, but she still remembers to check whether he is alive. After confirming that he is breathing, she drags him to a safe spot and allows him to rest. Then, with the emergency apparently under control, she returns to the milk salmon skewers, already releasing an irresistible aroma over the grill. The smell of roasted fish is powerful enough to bring the stranger back to consciousness. He wakes just as Rin bites into a perfectly seasoned piece of rich, tender salmon. Noticing the desperate hunger in his eyes, she offers him a skewer without hesitation. At first, the man accepts it with visible embarrassment. After his first bite, however, all restraint disappears. One skewer becomes 2, then 3, while Rin keeps grilling more and pours him barley tea to balance the rich flavor. By the time the meal is over, the man who nearly drowned has made a miraculous recovery, and the empty plates reveal just how long he must have gone without proper food. Once he has recovered enough to speak, the two finally introduce themselves. The man's name is Vil, an adventurer from the town of Elra. During a solo mission, he removed his clothes and entered a stream, only for a small monster to raid his belongings and eat every piece of food he had packed. His equipment remained untouched, but hunger eventually pushed him into making a reckless decision. He slipped into the river and was swept downstream until he reached Rin's fishing line. Fortunately, his race possesses an unusually durable body, which is the only reason he survived the violent journey without being seriously injured. Even though he owes Rin for saving and feeding him, Vil gently warns her not to trust every stranger she finds in the wilderness. A woman traveling alone should not rescue an unfamiliar man and immediately invite him to dinner without taking any precautions. Rin admits that his advice makes sense, but her survival strategy skill never warned her that Vil was dangerous. More importantly, even while exhausted, he noticed that her clothes were wet and showed concern for her condition. That small act of consideration was enough to convince Rin that he was not someone with malicious intentions. To Vil, the magic he casually demonstrates is nothing unusual. Rin, however, reacts with such overwhelming excitement that she practically jumps into the air. Her enthusiasm makes him realize that she has almost no knowledge of magic. Rin sees no reason to hide the truth and openly admits that she came from another world, one where people cannot casually produce supernatural abilities with a wave of the hand. Rin then asks whether Vil has ever heard of a ritual known as the summoning of a saint. She explains that she had been enjoying an ordinary camping trip when the ground suddenly collapsed beneath her. The next thing she knew, she had been dragged into an unfamiliar ceremonial chamber filled with mysterious robed figures. A high school student had also been summoned alongside her. A blonde noble immediately welcomed the younger girl as the saint, praising her as though she were the answer to every problem in the kingdom. Rin, meanwhile, received nothing except suspicious and disappointed looks. After examining Rin's abilities, the mages declared that her skills were completely useless. Without offering an explanation, compensation, or even basic directions, one of them activated another magic circle and threw her out of the chamber. When Rin regained consciousness, she found herself abandoned beside a lake in the middle of an unfamiliar forest. The summoners had dragged 2 innocent people away from their world, kept the one they wanted, and discarded the other like unwanted luggage. Vil is furious on Rin's behalf, but something else confuses him even more. She was taken away from her home, rejected by strangers, and abandoned in a dangerous wilderness. Most people would be terrified or emotionally shattered, yet Rin appears surprisingly calm. The explanation lies in her survival strategy skill. It automatically helps her body and mind adapt to unfamiliar environments, supplies essential survival knowledge, and warns her whenever danger is nearby. It is an incredibly powerful ability, although there is something almost tragic about a skill that makes being abandoned easier to endure. Thanks to survival strategy, Rin has maintained her emotional stability and constructed a comfortable campsite entirely by herself. Vil's eyes light up as he listens. Any adventurer would desperately want an ability that improves environmental awareness, survival knowledge, and adaptability. Somehow, the summoners looked at one of the most valuable exploration skills imaginable and called it worthless. Rin is about to reveal her second ability when Vil's stomach growls loudly enough to interrupt the conversation. The two agree that explanations can wait. Dinner is now the highest priority. Now that some trust has formed between them, Rin decides to reveal her greatest secret. She walks into an open area and quietly establishes Vil's access permission. A moment later, an enormous luxury camper appears before them. Rin affectionately calls it Mochan. She explains that it functions as both a miniature department store and a mobile hotel, and only people personally authorized by her can touch or enter it. After receiving permission, Vil steps inside and is immediately overwhelmed by the enormous interior. The vehicle contains a dining area, beds, a bathroom, a fully equipped kitchen, and even a refrigerator. Rin explains that Mochan uses something similar to spatial magic, allowing the interior and storage capacity to be far larger than the outside suggests. Food and essential supplies automatically replenish themselves by absorbing mana from the surrounding atmosphere. Clean water is produced through the same process, while waste is broken down and converted back into mana. It is not merely a camper, it is a completely self-sustaining recycling system. Vil can barely understand how the summoners managed to classify such an ability as useless. Mochan is a mobile fortress with enormous storage, permanent shelter, clean water, and an endlessly replenishing food supply. Used properly, Rin could support an entire military division. The only limitation is that Mochan can be summoned only outdoors. Since Rin was examined inside a cramped ritual chamber, the mages probably never saw the true form of the ability they dismissed. While Rin prepares dinner, Vil volunteers to patrol the surrounding area. He returns without any bad news and brings her a massive piece of Almirage loin as a gift. Rin recognizes it as meat from a monster resembling a horned rabbit. Vil offers it as a small repayment for the meal that saved his life earlier that day. Rin happily stores the meat and invites him to sit down for dinner. Dinner consists of steaming risotto and thinly sliced fish carpaccio. The soft rice absorbs the rich flavor of milk, while the fresh fish remains sweet and delicate without any unpleasant smell. Olive oil and herbs bring the entire dish together. When Vil lowers his head and eats in silence, Rin worries that the unfamiliar flavors may not suit him. Then he looks up and praises the food with complete sincerity. He admits that he has never eaten anything this delicious while camping in the wilderness. After a respectful pause, he quietly asks for another bowl. Rin modestly insists that she is only someone who enjoys cooking. Even the milk salmon skewers from lunch were, in her opinion, an ordinary outdoor meal. Vil disagrees. Plenty of people can cook simple ingredients, but very few can transform them into food this memorable. Once they have eaten their fill, he asks what Rin intends to do next. She admits that she has no idea how to return home. Still, she has little interest in spending every day consumed by anger. Until she finds a way back, she plans to use her two skills to travel, camp, and experience this new world. Vil immediately points out several problems with that plan. Mochan may solve food and shelter, but living near civilization requires money, employment, identification documents, and knowledge of local laws. Rin currently possesses none of those things. Vil therefore makes her a practical offer. She can join his adventuring party as their cook and logistics specialist. Mochan will handle supplies and transportation, while the party will help her earn money, establish an identity, and safely enter society. According to Vil, adventurers spend their lives marching through bad weather, dangerous terrain, and exhausting battles. A warm, delicious meal can restore morale better than almost anything else. Unfortunately, every member of his party is a disaster in the kitchen. Recruiting Rin would be like receiving an answer to their prayers. More importantly, Vil genuinely wants to repay her kindness. He awkwardly admits that he cannot promise every journey will be safe or comfortable, but he swears that he and his companions will protect her with everything they have. Rin likes what she hears. That night, she curls up beneath the warm blankets inside Mochan and watches two unfamiliar moons hanging beyond the window. In a single day, she has experienced confusion, rejection, loneliness, and unexpected kindness. She was kidnapped from her world and thrown away by people who saw no value in her. Yet she also happened to rescue a kind adventurer who now wants to support her. When she considers everything that has happened, the strange connection between them feels almost like fate. The next morning, Rin enthusiastically accepts the offer and officially becomes the exclusive cook and logistics specialist of Vil's party. The two celebrate with a cheerful high five before preparing to depart for Elra. Before setting out, Rin gathers more of the wild vegetables she used in the previous night's risotto. Vil panics when he notices a nearly identical poisonous plant growing nearby. Even he cannot reliably distinguish between them, and eating the wrong one could be fatal. Rin calmly assures him that her survival strategy skill has already confirmed which plants are safe. The ability to identify edible ingredients with complete accuracy is further proof that she was practically designed to manage supplies. As they walk, Rin asks about the companions she will soon meet. Vil explains that their party is called the Gluttonous Banquet and consists of 4 members. Ed is an alchemist, while his wife, Arya, controls magical spider silk. The final member is Sinon, an elven priest. The moment Rin hears the word elf, her love of tabletop fantasy comes roaring back. She immediately imagines a graceful and beautiful young woman with an elegant presence. Vil destroys the fantasy by casually informing her that Sinon is a man. A little later, Survival Strategy detects a cluster of safe, edible berries. Rin eagerly walks toward them and becomes so focused on the discovery that she forgets to examine her surroundings. Vil suddenly shouts a warning. A flock of black phantom birds dives toward them from above. The berries are perfectly safe to eat, but the bush happens to be growing directly beneath a monster nest. Vil reacts instantly, pulling Rin out of the attack and cutting down the birds before they can leave even a scratch on her. Rin repeatedly apologizes for relying too heavily on her skill and forgetting to remain alert. Vil does not blame her. He gently assures her that she no longer has to confront every danger by herself. From now on, he will be there to protect her. Under the circumstances, it is difficult for Rin not to see him surrounded by the radiant light of a fantasy hero. Afterward, Vil explains that defeated monsters sometimes leave useful materials behind, including edible meat. Rin finally realizes that the Almirage loin from the previous day came from the same process. Her abilities may be extraordinary, but her practical knowledge of this world remains close to zero. Traveling with experienced adventurers will help fill the gaps that Survival Strategy cannot cover. They climb into Mochan and begin driving toward Elraj. At first, Vil doubts that a wheeled vehicle of that size can move at all. When it accelerates faster than any horse-drawn carriage he has ever seen, he falls completely silent. A journey that normally requires 3 days on foot is reduced to less than 3 hours. Mochan also possesses a limited concealment function that prevents it from drawing too much attention. Even so, as they approach populated territory, Vil recommends using a mountain road where fewer people are likely to see them. Even over rough forest terrain, the interior of Mochan remains as smooth and comfortable as if the vehicle were floating. The more Vil experiences Rin's abilities, the more unbelievable they become. He warns her to keep Mochan secret from as many people as possible. Something this valuable could easily attract powerful enemies. Rin agrees, but before the conversation can continue, Survival Strategy suddenly triggers an urgent danger warning. The warning points directly toward a massive flame bear standing in the road ahead. Fire burns continuously across its fur, and Vil is shocked because this species should not normally appear anywhere near the region. 3 adventurers are already fighting it. Arya throws a huge web of spider silk around the creature's neck, but the flames burn through the threads almost immediately. She slaps her forehead, realizing a little too late that using flammable restraints against a fire monster was not her finest tactical decision. Ed sees Arya losing ground and immediately panics, assuming that his wife has been injured. Seonyeon calmly reminds him that only the silk is burning and that Arya herself is completely unharmed. The familiar combination of personalities allows Rin to recognize them immediately. These must be the other 3 members of the gluttonous banquet. The entire party has finally gathered, although their first meeting happens in the middle of a battle against a monster that wandered far outside its normal territory. Vil tells Rin to remain safely inside Mochan. He is confident that his companions will not be defeated by a single flame bear. After giving the warning, he grabs his sword, leaves the vehicle, and joins Ed, Arya, and Seonyeon. Rin has only just accepted her new job, yet she is already receiving a front row seat to watch her future teammates demonstrate their abilities. The moment Vil emerges from Mochan, Ed, Arya, and Seonyeon casually raise their hands in greeting, as though the enormous burning bear were merely an impatient visitor. Seonyeon remarks that Vil completed the recruitment faster than expected. Ed, meanwhile, complains that his dream of enjoying private adventures alone with his beloved wife has already been destroyed. Vil rubs his face and asks everyone to postpone the conversation until after the monster has been defeated. Inside the vehicle, Rin crouches behind the windshield with her eyes shining. For her, this is the first real battle she has witnessed in another world, and the view feels better than the most expensive action movie experience imaginable. Ed opens the battle with ice magic, producing enormous blocks of frozen material to stop the flame bear's attacks. The creature responds by hurling an entire tree toward him. Arya reacts quickly, catching the trunk with her spider silk before her husband can be crushed. Rather than becoming frightened after nearly being killed, Ed happily declares that being rescued by his wife has only made him love her more. Sinan taps him on the forehead and reminds both husband and wife that the bear is still standing directly in front of them. Vil decides to end the fight before the conversation becomes even more embarrassing. He draws his sword and charges directly toward the flame bear. The massive creature barely has time to understand what is happening before a brilliant line flashes across its body. With a single decisive strike, Vil kills the monster and leaves behind a collection of useful materials. From inside Mochan, Rin rests her chin in her hands and stares at him with open admiration. Just when the group begins to relax, Ed notices a tiny scratch on Arya's hand. He immediately panics, calls desperately for Seonyeon, and demands emergency healing while repeatedly insisting that no scar can be allowed to remain on his wife. Arya explains that the mark is an old injury from running through the forest and has nothing to do with the flame bear. Seonyeon calmly remarks that such a minor scratch hardly matters. Ed turns bright red with embarrassment, yet he continues holding Arya's hand as though she has just returned from the edge of death. Once everyone has been confirmed unharmed, Vil asks why the three of them were wandering around an area normally used by inexperienced adventurers. Arya explains that they had planned only a casual trip to collect a few ingredients. Instead, they found a group of beginners being overwhelmed by the flame bear and stepped in to save them. A high-level monster appearing in a beginner area is far from normal. They will need to report the incident to the Adventurers Guild and investigate why it wandered so far from its natural habitat. With the battle over, Vil returns to Mochan and invites Rin outside to meet everyone. The moment she appears, she begins excitedly describing how impressive the fight looked. She praises Ed's ice magic, Arya's spider silk, and Vil's decisive finishing attack with enough enthusiasm to make all three of them feel like legendary heroes. Rin may be a newcomer, but she already understands the value of complimenting her future co-workers. Vil formally introduces Rin as the new logistics specialist and cook that the party has desperately needed. The moment Ed, Arya, and Sinan hear the word cooking, their eyes shine with almost supernatural intensity. Arya immediately steps forward, grabs both of Rin's hands, and asks whether her food is truly as good as Vil claims. When Rin shyly asks what she should cook for her introduction, all three answer at nearly the same time: meat. Realizing that food will be the fastest way to prove herself, Rin decides to prepare the phantom bird meat collected earlier. Survival strategy confirms that it is safe and works especially well with a strongly seasoned sauce. Rin immediately chooses to make sweet and savory teriyaki-style grilled skewers. Rin heads into Mochan to collect her cooking equipment. Unfortunately, the three new companions have not yet received access permission. From their perspective, Rin walks into the middle of an empty field and suddenly disappears without explanation. Inside, she quickly slices the phantom bird meat into small pieces, mixes soy sauce, sugar, and seasonings into a glaze, then marinates the meat and threads it neatly onto bamboo skewers. Vil asks whether she has been using invisibility magic simply to collect kitchen tools. Only then does Rin remember that she never granted the others permission to see Mochan. She starts to correct the mistake, but Vil tells her to leave things as they are for a little longer. Watching the others become increasingly confused is far too entertaining. The skewers begin sizzling the moment they touch the grill. The sauce caramelizes over the meat, releasing an aroma that spreads across the entire area. Rin carefully turns each skewer while worrying that the flavors from her world may be too unfamiliar for local tastes. Arya volunteers to try the first piece. The moment she bites into the richly seasoned meat, her eyes light up. Ed, Sinan, and Vil immediately follow her example. The first batch disappears before it has even had enough time to cool. Vil praises the balance between sweetness and saltiness. Ed cannot believe that ordinary monster meat can become something worthy of a celebration after passing through Rin's hands. Sinan eats just as enthusiastically as everyone else. Rin had imagined that an elf might survive on leaves, fruit, and pure forest air. The speed at which Sinan destroys the skewers corrects that misunderstanding immediately. Arya immediately embraces Rin and declares that from now on, every day of her life will be spent waiting for mealtime. Sinan maintains his dignified expression while calmly entrusting the future of his stomach to her. Vil formally hands responsibility for the party's supplies and kitchen to their new recruit. Rin bows and promises to work hard, while politely asking everyone to be patient with her as she adjusts to the job. After everyone has eaten, Rin finally grants Ed, Arya, and Sinan access to Mochan. The previously invisible camper suddenly appears before them, leaving all three completely speechless. When they step inside and discover an interior far larger than the outside, their expressions become a perfect combination of confusion and amazement. The group boards Mochan and continues toward Elra. The vehicle travels faster than a racing carriage, yet the interior remains perfectly smooth. Ed, Arya, and Sinan press themselves against the windows, watching the landscape rush past while debating how the vehicle could possibly function. They suggest combinations of advanced spatial, movement, protective, and energy magic. The longer they discuss it, the more confused they become. Mochan operates far beyond the magical system understood by the people of this world. Seeing their excitement, Rin quietly asks Vil whether the vehicle should be treated as a closely guarded secret. Vil agrees without hesitation. A mobile base capable of providing transportation, shelter, food, water, and storage would become the target of nobles, merchants, armies, and criminals alike. If powerful people discovered everything Mochan could do, they might start an international conflict simply to possess it. Protecting the secret is therefore the same as protecting Rin's life. Vil then awkwardly apologizes for already reporting some information about Rin to the Adventurers Guild. A summoning from another world may involve matters of national security, so he could not responsibly keep everything hidden. Rin is not angry. She understands that she needs legal identification, income, information about this world, and any possible clue that might help her return home. Remaining completely hidden would only prevent the guild from offering assistance. As they travel, Vil explains that Elra belongs to a large island nation surrounded by the sea. The country was founded by people who rejected war and searched for a place where different races could live peacefully. Humans, elves, dwarves, and beastfolk crossed the ocean together and built the nation over generations. Because coexistence is part of its history, an inexperienced otherworlder like Rin is far more likely to be welcomed there than feared or rejected. However, Vil warns that the rest of the world is not always so accepting. The island nation trades openly with foreign powers, but remains cautious of kingdoms that still follow rigid feudal traditions. Elrage is also a major center of international commerce, with ships, merchants, and information arriving constantly. If anyone has heard recent rumors about the summoning of a saint, the Adventurers Guild in Elrage is one of the best places to investigate. While Vil discusses international politics and national security, Rin's attention immediately drifts toward the fresh fish markets and enormous selection of seafood she expects to find in a coastal city. Vil laughs and informs her that Elrage is nearly as large as the royal capital. To Rin, that apparently means only one thing, an even greater number of ingredients to explore. Near Elrage, Rin pulls Mochan away from the main road and returns it to her storage space before anyone can notice. The group enters the city on foot. Rin looks everywhere at once, fascinated by the buildings, canals, markets, and many different races moving through the streets. Arya, Ed, and Sinon return to the party headquarters to clean and prepare a welcome celebration. Vil takes Rin directly to the Adventurers Guild so she can complete her employment registration. At the reception counter, Rin comes face to face with an adorable employee whose pointed ears and wagging tail immediately capture her full attention. She becomes so fascinated that she almost forgets why she came. Vil laughs and explains that this is Rin's first time meeting a kobold. The receptionist introduces herself as Sheila and casually mentions that she has worked at the guild for around 20 years. When Vil repeats the number far too loudly, Sheila gives him a terrifying look and reminds him that discussing a woman's age is one of the fastest ways to shorten an adventurer's life. Sheila checks the latest reports and confirms that the beginners attacked by the flame bear returned safely. With the emergency resolved, she gives Rin an application form for the logistics position in the gluttonous banquet. Rin begins writing in Japanese, only to watch the characters transform automatically into the local language. Even more surprisingly, she can read and understand everything on the page as naturally as if she had studied it for years. Once the paperwork is approved, Sheila stamps the application and warmly welcomes Rin to the guild. Vil then explains that they must meet the person in charge. The two enter the office of Guildmaster Tori, a bald man wearing an eye patch who looks more like the leader of a criminal organization than a friendly administrator. The moment he speaks, however, he proves direct, practical, and surprisingly approachable. Tori reveals that the guild has received an urgent intelligence report concerning the summoning of a saint, an ancient ritual believed to have disappeared into legend centuries ago. Tori studies Vil and remarks that he has discovered an exceptionally rare person. Not only did Vil locate someone involved in the summoning, but he also recruited her into his own party before anyone else could reach her. When questioned, Rin tells the truth. She was summoned alongside a younger student. The other girl was welcomed as the saint and taken away by a handsome nobleman, while Rin was declared useless and thrown into the wilderness. To confirm her story, Tori asked permission to examine Rin's status using appraisal magic. Vil immediately objects that a person's status information is private. Rin becomes nervous for an entirely different reason, wondering whether the spell might reveal her weight or financial history. Tori laughs and assures her that his appraisal ability is nowhere near powerful enough to uncover such personal secrets. Relieved, Rin agrees to the examination. A glowing blue status screen appears, revealing that Rin possesses two classes, Otherworlder and Traveler. It also displays survival strategy and the extraordinary Mochan ability. Tori explains that Otherworlder is an exclusive class granted to people who arrive from another world. Such individuals usually receive a random special skill and an additional profession. The result confirms beyond doubt that Rin was summoned from elsewhere. However, she possesses no class, title, or ability connected to being a saint. Vil and Tori can barely hide their admiration as they study Rin's abilities, but the more important question is who performed the summoning and why. Vil explains that the ritual requires an enormous amount of magical energy. A nation would normally attempt it only during a catastrophic war, a monster invasion, a deadly plague, or another crisis threatening its survival. Yet the guild has received no reports of any major conflict or disaster that would justify using such an extreme. Vil then remembers the flame bear that appeared in the beginner hunting area earlier that day. A powerful monster suddenly entering territory far outside its normal range may be an early warning of something larger. Tori agrees that the possibility deserves attention, although a single incident is not enough to connect it directly to the summoning ritual. More strangely, the flame bear Vil defeated appeared much weaker and thinner than a healthy member of its species. Even weakened, the bear remained powerful enough to slaughter inexperienced adventurers. Tori decides they cannot afford to ignore the situation. He assigns the gluttonous banquet to patrol the outer region around Elrage for the near future. They can continue accepting work, but they must remain close enough to respond if more abnormal monsters appear. Vil accepts the mission. Rin watches with widened eyes, realizing that the party she casually joined is influential enough to receive an important assignment directly from the guildmaster. After leaving the guild, Rin and Vil travel to the headquarters of the gluttonous banquet where Ed, Arya, and Sinon are waiting. The house is surprisingly large. Vil explains that the previous owner died suddenly, which immediately makes Rin nervous about possible ghosts. Sinon calmly reminds her that he is a priest. If a ghost appears, he will simply send it peacefully into the afterlife. What Rin appreciates most is the enormous backyard. It provides more than enough space to summon Mochan without curious neighbors discovering the party's greatest secret. For dinner, Rin uses the Al-Mirage meat Vil collected, Tilla mushrooms brought by Ed, and the phantom bird eggs. She tears the mushrooms into smaller pieces, seasons sliced meat with soy sauce, cooking wine, and sugar, then fries everything together for a mixed rice dish. She beats the eggs with chopped green onions and rolls them into soft layers. Finally, she cuts the Al-Mirage loin into thick pieces, sears them in a hot pan, and finishes them with a glossy sauce made from ginger and soy. Rather than relying entirely on supplies from Mochan, Rin combines premium ingredients from this world with the cooking techniques she knows best. Before long, 3 dishes are ready: mushroom and meat mixed rice, rolled phantom bird eggs with green onions, and thick Al-Mirage steaks covered in fragrant ginger sauce. The aroma spreads through every room of the headquarters. The moment the food reaches the table, the entire party becomes completely silent. Rin begins sweating, convinced that she has somehow ruined the meal. In reality, everyone is simply shocked that the food looks and smells better than they imagined possible. Vil repeatedly apologizes for underestimating their new cook. Rin quickly tells them to stop staring and begin eating. Arya takes the first spoonful of mixed rice, while Ed, Sinon, and Vil immediately reach for the dishes they have been watching most closely. Arya praises the deep flavor of the Tilla mushrooms and how perfectly they complement the seasoned meat. Ed declares that the meal restores his energy as though someone has completely refilled his stamina. Sinon becomes fascinated by the rolled eggs. Their richness is balanced by the fresh flavor and slight crunch of the green onions, keeping the dish light enough to eat continuously. After only 2 bites, the dignified elven priest has already abandoned most of his usual restraint. Vil focuses entirely on the Al-Mirage steak with ginger sauce. The meat is normally unpleasantly tough, yet Rin has somehow made it tender and juicy. The sweet and salty glaze covers every piece, while the aroma of ginger makes it almost impossible to stop eating. Vil finishes his first bowl of rice and immediately requests another. Arya extends her bowl as well. Ed loudly demands both additional rice and more meat. Even Sinon abandons his pride and announces that he refuses to sit quietly while everyone else eats the remaining food. Within moments, the peaceful dinner table becomes a battlefield where every member of the gluttonous banquet fights for one more serving.